By the time Emperor Andronicus II took the throne in 1282, the Byzantine Empire was already fracturing. The borders were shrinking inward as Turkish forces advanced steadily through Anatolia, erasing the frontier piece by piece. To defend what was left of the territory, the state needed a massive influx of capital, but the treasury was effectively empty. The old tax base was gone, and previous administrations had exhausted whatever gold reserves remained. Looking at this stamped gold hyperpyron coin, we can see the physical evidence of Andronicus's first emergency measure. He heavily devalued the state currency, reducing the precious metal content to stretch the dwindling treasury. State revenues plummeted to less than a seventh of their previous levels. With the currency collapsing, the government made an even more drastic cut. In 1285, they completely dismantled the native Byzantine navy. The ships were scrapped or left to rot in the harbors, and the sailors were dismissed to eliminate the immense costs of maintaining a fleet. Stripping away both the financial foundation and the maritime defense forces created an enormous power vacuum. To survive, the administration had no choice but to start buying essential state functions from third parties. Without a navy, the empire's coastal cities and vital Mediterranean trade routes were completely exposed. To fill this void, Byzantium turned to the wealthy, rising maritime power across the Adriatic, the Republic of Venice. This historical photograph shows the Venetian arsenal, a shipyard operating on a scale Byzantium could no longer match. Its production line system launched galleys at a relentless pace. Relying on these Italian fleets meant the Byzantine state effectively surrendered control of its own waters. This map illustrates the financial trap of the arrangement. To secure these foreign fleets, Byzantine wealth continuously flowed out of Constantinople and accumulated in Venice. The empire was forced to grant sweeping tax exemptions and trade monopolies to the Italians, draining the local economy. Renting a foreign navy permanently ceded Byzantine economic independence to a powerful commercial rival. Meanwhile, the land borders were collapsing. By 1302, encroaching Turkish armies were dismantling the Anatolian frontier, forcing the administration to seek cheap, immediate ground forces. Andronicus hired the Catalan Company. This was a ruthless band of unemployed Spanish mercenaries, hardened combat veterans known as almogavars, who offered their services for a fraction of the cost of a standing national army. Initially, the Catalans delivered. They crossed into Asia Minor and violently routed Turkish forces in a series of swift victories. But they quickly realized the Byzantine state was too weak to enforce discipline. They stopped taking orders and began violently pillaging Byzantine towns to extract their own pay. Desperate to regain control of this rogue army, the Byzantine government orchestrated a lethal miscalculation. In 1305, they invited the Catalan leader, Roger de Flor, to a royal banquet, where he was abruptly assassinated. Instead of disbanding, the surviving Catalans sought revenge. They turned on their employers, ravaging the region of Thrace for 2 straight years. Eventually, they marched south directly into Greece and conquered the Duchy of Athens, setting themselves up as independent lords. Importing a profit-driven, unaccountable army to guard the borders backfired. The hired blades transformed a localized external threat into a devastating internal infection. Over a century later, in the 1430s, the empire's physical reality had shrunk entirely to Constantinople, trapped behind these massive Theodosian walls. Completely isolated, the government was desperate for Western military intervention. This bronze commemorative medal shows the profile of Emperor John VIII Palaiologos. Looking closely at his isolated profile, we see a ruler completely detached from his people's convictions. In 1438, he attended the Council of Florence to seek Western aid. The treaty he negotiated required compromising core Orthodox tenets, like the concept of purgatory and the creed's exact wording, to formally submit to the Pope. When the emperor returned to Constantinople, the local clergy and the Byzantine laity fiercely rejected the signed agreement. Prominent bishops refused to implement the council's decisions, and the public actively rebelled against the union. Deep cultural resentment from the 1204 Crusader sack of the city boiled over. The population famously declared that they would rather see the Turkish turban ruling the city than submit to the papal tiara. Bartering the empire's religious identity for phantom military aid achieved nothing. It destroyed internal social cohesion at the exact moment absolute unity was required to survive. In the spring of 1453, the Ottoman Turks surrounded the city. Heavy siege cannons pounded the ancient stone fortifications, and Constantinople finally fell. At the moment of its death, the Byzantine Empire was fractured, ideologically divided, economically drained, and completely defenseless. This graph charts the post-collapse trajectories of the third parties involved. The outsourced partners extracted immense value from the dying state. Venice thrived as an unmatched trade empire. The Catalans held their independent territory for decades, and the Eastern and Western churches remained entirely divided. Looking at the Hagia Sophia today, standing intact but repurposed, it serves as a monument to the empire that lost control of its own fate. Outsourcing a nation's poor defense, economy, and ideology does not buy survival. It merely funds the entities that will replace it.